My boyfriend said, "I need to follow my desires." I replied, "Then follow them alone." He thought I would beg, chase, cry, and wait quietly while he tested whatever spark he thought he had with his female trainer. Instead, I canceled the Cabo suite, separated our shared plan, and let him learn that desire feels very different when the comfort disappears. Hello, everyone. My name is Savannah Hale. I'm 33, and I used to believe stability was proof that love was safe. Not perfect, not dramatic, just safe. Rowan and I had been together for a little over 2.5 years. We had routines, shared expenses, weekend habits, a vacation planned, and a future that had never been formally promised, but somehow still felt understood. That was the dangerous part. Because sometimes the things you never say out loud become the things someone else thinks they can quietly change. At first, the shift was small. Rowan started spending more time at the gym. I didn't mind. I liked that he cared about his health. But after a while, the way he talked about it changed. It stopped being about exercise. It became about energy, freedom, feeling alive, becoming a different version of himself. And then there was Celeste, his trainer. At first, her name came up naturally, then too naturally, then constantly. Celeste says I'm finally pushing past my limits. Celeste thinks I've been holding myself back. Celeste says sometimes your body knows what you want before your mind admits it. The first time he said that, I looked up from the kitchen counter. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to. That was the part I kept replaying later, not the words, the ease of them, the way he let another woman's philosophy enter our home like it had earned a seat at the table. Still, I didn't accuse him. Because accusing someone too early only gives them a chance to hide better, so I watched. I watched the way his phone tilted away when messages came in. I watched how his gym sessions ran longer. I watched how he stopped asking what I wanted for dinner and started talking about needing space to breathe. Then one evening, everything finally came out. There was no fight before it, no slammed door, no dramatic trigger, just Rowan sitting across from me, calm enough to scare me. He said he had been thinking about his life, about who he was becoming, about how he didn't want to feel restricted anymore. Then he said it. I need to follow my desires. For a few seconds, I didn't answer. Not because I didn't understand, because I understood too clearly. That sentence wasn't confusion. It wasn't honesty. It wasn't growth. It was a door he had already opened, and now he wanted me to stand politely beside it while he walked through. So I said, then follow them alone. His face changed. Not heartbreak, surprise. That told me everything. He had prepared for tears, questions, maybe even bargaining. He expected me to ask what this meant for us, how long he needed, whether he still loved me. But I didn't. Because the moment someone asks for freedom while still expecting access to your loyalty, they are not asking for love. They are asking for control. Rowan leaned forward. That's not what I meant. I almost smiled. People always say that when you understand them too quickly. What did you mean? I asked. He exhaled like I was making it difficult. I just mean I don't want to feel boxed in. I don't want to wake up one day and wonder if I missed out on becoming who I was supposed to be. And Celeste helps with that? His jaw tightened. There it was, the first crack. This isn't about her. It became about her the second you brought desire into our living room. He looked away. That hurt more than if he had yelled, because silence has a shape, and his silence looked exactly like guilt. Then he started explaining. Slowly at first, then faster. He said it didn't change how he felt about me. He said he still cared. He said relationships should allow people to grow. He said he didn't want to lose what we had. That was the part that made my chest go cold. He didn't want to lose what we had. He just wanted permission to damage it. I sat there, calm on the outside, while something inside me quietly stepped back from him. Not all at once, just enough to see him clearly. When he finished, he reached for my hand. I moved mine before he touched it. His eyes flicked down. You're being extreme, he said. No, I said. I'm being accurate. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he had only known the version of me who planned trips, remembered bills, packed his vitamins when he traveled, and made life smooth enough for him to mistake my love for something guaranteed. That night, I didn't yell. I didn't ask to see his phone. I didn't demand he stop training with Celeste. I simply got up, rinsed my glass, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay beside him, listening to his breathing, staring at the ceiling, and slowly accepting the truth. Rowan wasn't confused. He was comfortable, comfortable enough to test another life because he believed mine would still be waiting. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. Not revenge, adjustment. Because when someone changes the terms of a relationship without your consent, you are allowed to change your position without warning. And Rowan had no idea I had already started. The next morning, he acted like the conversation had been intense but temporary. That confirmed everything. He came into the kitchen wearing the same calm expression he always wore after he thought a difficult moment had passed. He kissed the side of my head like nothing permanent had happened, opened the fridge, and asked if we still had oat milk. I looked at him for 1 second too long. Yes, I said. He didn't notice the pause. Or he pretended not to. That was always one of Rowan's gifts. He could move past discomfort quickly when the discomfort belonged to someone else. I watched him pour his coffee, scroll through his phone, and smile at something on the screen. A small smile, private, gone too fast. I didn't ask who it was, not because I didn't care, because I already knew enough. For the next few days, I became quieter, but not cold. I didn't want him to accuse me of punishing him just so he could make himself the victim, so I stayed polite, present, functional. But inside, I was separating. Every little thing began looking different. The vacation folder on my laptop, the shared phone plan, the streaming accounts, the automatic payment for the gym supplement subscription he had added to my card because months earlier he said it was easier if we kept everything together. Together. That word started sounding strange, because we were only together when it benefited him. On the third evening after the conversation, Rowan came home late from the gym. His hair was still damp, his shirt clinging to his shoulders, and he carried that restless energy he had been wearing more and more lately. I might grab dinner after training tomorrow, he said casually, dropping his keys near the bowl by the door. With who? He paused, only half a second. But half a second can tell the truth before a person does. Celeste, he said, and maybe a couple people from the gym. I nodded. That bothered him. He expected jealousy, a question. A crack in my voice he could label insecurity. Instead, I said, okay. He watched me. That's it? I looked up from my laptop. What else should there be? His expression tightened. I just don't want you making it weird. There it was. The old trick. Do something that changes the relationship, then make the other person responsible for keeping the atmosphere comfortable. I closed my laptop slowly. Rowan, you told me you needed to follow your desires. I believed you. He blinked. I didn't say I was leaving you. No, I said. You said something easier. You wanted the benefits of leaving without paying the cost. His face hardened. That's unfair. Maybe, I said, but it's clear. He looked away first. That night, after he went to shower, I opened my laptop again. Not to check his messages, not to track him, to check my own life. The Cabo suite was first. It had been booked under my name because I had planned most of it. Rowan had been excited when I reserved it. He sent me beach restaurants, sunset tours, photos of the private balcony. He had called it our reset trip. Now the word reset felt almost insulting. I opened the booking confirmation and stared at the details. Ocean view, 4 nights, non-refundable deposit, partial cancellation credit. His name listed as guest, mine as primary. For a minute, I just sat there. Canceling it felt heavier than I expected, not because of the money, but because of what the trip had represented. I had pictured us there, coffee on the balcony, laughing over overpriced room service, maybe talking honestly about where our relationship was going. Now I saw something else. Rowan enjoying the softness of a vacation I arranged, while deciding whether another woman made him feel more alive. My stomach turned, so I didn't cancel it yet. I saved the page. Then I moved to the phone plan, shared data, shared billing, my card. Then the subscriptions, my account, my password, my payment. then the calendar invite for Cabo, then the airport transfer, then the travel insurance. Line by line, I realized how much of our shared life was actually my structure holding up his comfort. And that was the hidden truth. The betrayal is not always one dramatic act. Sometimes it is the slow discovery that someone has been standing on a floor you built while wondering if he would be happier in another room. The next day, Rowan went to meet Celeste. He didn't dress like he was grabbing casual food after a workout. He changed twice, used cologne, asked me if his jacket looked too formal. I looked at him in the mirror. "No," I said. "It looks intentional." His eyes met mine through the reflection. For a second, he almost looked ashamed. Almost. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, smiled before he could stop himself, and slipped it into his pocket. "I won't be late," he said. I didn't answer, because we both knew that wasn't the point. After he left, the apartment became painfully quiet. I stood in the living room and looked around at the life we had made look stable. His shoes by the door, his protein shaker in the sink, his hoodie over the chair, evidence of him everywhere. But suddenly, none of it felt intimate. It felt borrowed. That night, while he was out following whatever he had wrapped in prettier language, I opened the Cabo booking again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I reviewed the cancellation terms, clicked through the warning, accepted the penalty, confirmed. A minute later, the email arrived. "Your reservation has been canceled." I stared at the screen, no tears, no shaking, just a clean, strange silence. It felt less like losing a vacation and more like taking my name off a future he had already disrespected. Then I removed him from the airport transfer, canceled the dinner reservation attached to the trip, changed the password on the streaming account, separated the shared phone plan request, updated the billing on anything that belonged to me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just carefully, because I had finally understood something Rowan had not. He thought the relationship was a place he could leave temporarily. I understood it was a door, and once I closed it, he would not get to decide when it opened again. He came home close to midnight, too careful, too soft, too guilty. "Hey," he said, stepping inside. I was sitting on the couch with a book open in my lap, though I had not read a single page. "Hey." He waited. I did not ask how dinner was. That bothered him more than any argument would have. "It was just food," he said. I turned one page. I didn't ask. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, I saw uncertainty settle over him. Not regret, not yet, just the beginning of fear. Because a man who expects you to fight is never prepared for you to quietly stop reaching. And by the next morning, he noticed the first thing missing. I was at the kitchen counter making coffee when I heard him swear softly from the living room. What happened to the reservation? I didn't turn around immediately. I poured cream into my mug, stirred once, then looked over my shoulder. I canceled it. He stared at me from the couch, phone still in his hand. For a second, he looked genuinely confused, like his brain could not process the sentence because it didn't fit the reality he had planned for himself. "You what?" I canceled Cabo. The silence after that felt heavier than shouting. He stood slowly. "Why would you do that?" His tone wasn't angry yet. It was startled, and that mattered. Anger comes when people think something unfair happened to them. Shock comes when they realize they never imagined consequences at all. I took a sip of coffee. Because the trip doesn't make sense anymore. "That's insane. We've had that booked for months." "Yes, that was for us." I looked directly at him. "Exactly." The word landed hard. I watched his expression change in real time, not into guilt, into realization. This was the first moment he understood I wasn't treating his little awakening like a temporary phase. I meant what I said, and suddenly, that scared him. "You didn't even talk to me first," he said. "There wasn't anything to discuss." His jaw tightened. "So you're just making decisions for both of us now?" I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. "No," I said. "You already did that when you decided you wanted freedom without changing anything else." "That's not what this is, why not?" "Then explain what it is." He opened his mouth, stopped, tried again. "I just needed space." "You already took it." That hit him harder than I intended, because it was true. The gym dinners, the late nights, the emotional distance, the careful language about becoming a different person. He had already stepped outside the relationship emotionally. He just wanted me to keep holding the door open while he explored. And now the door was moving. He walked closer to the counter. "You're acting like I cheated on you." I held his gaze. "You started mourning this relationship before I even knew it was dying." His face changed slightly. A flicker. Very small, but real. For the first time since this started, he looked unsettled instead of defensive. "You're twisting this," he said quietly. "No. I'm finally seeing it correctly." The room went silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming behind us, traffic outside, a dog barking somewhere down the street. Tiny normal sounds. That was the strange thing about heartbreak. The world keeps sounding ordinary while your entire emotional structure quietly collapses. Rowan rubbed the back of his neck. "I think you're overreacting because you're scared." There it was, the soft condescension people use when they want to make your pain sound irrational. I set my mug down carefully. "No, Rowan," I said. "I'm reacting because I finally stopped being scared." That shut him up, completely. Because fear had been holding the relationship together longer than I wanted to admit. Fear of starting over. Fear of wasting years. Fear of discovering I loved him more than he loved me. But once someone shows you they are willing to risk losing you just to test excitement elsewhere, something changes permanently. You stop protecting the relationship harder than they do. Then he noticed something else. My Netflix logged out. I blinked once. "So?" His eyes snapped back to mine. "You changed the password?" "Yes." "Seriously?" "You said you wanted independence." "That's petty." "No," I replied. "That's separation." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him anymore. Maybe because the version of me he knew would have cried first. This version just adjusted the structure. That afternoon, he barely spoke to me before leaving for the gym, but the energy had changed. The confidence from earlier in the week was gone. Now he kept watching me carefully, like he was trying to figure out how much farther I was willing to go. The answer was simple, all the way. While he was gone, I continued quietly untangling our life. I removed his access from the travel rewards account connected to my card, canceled the meal delivery subscription, separated the shared cloud storage. Tiny things. But tiny things are what make a life feel seamless. And Rowan had mistaken seamlessness for permanence. Around 7 that evening, my phone buzzed. A tagged photo. One of Rowan's gym friends had uploaded a group picture from dinner. Celeste was sitting beside him. Too close. His body angled toward hers, in a way I recognized immediately, because I used to be the person he leaned toward like that. I stared at the image for a long moment. Not because it surprised me, because it didn't. That was the painful part. My chest hurt, but beneath the hurt was clarity, sharp and cold. He wasn't lost. He was excited, and he believed he could safely explore that excitement because he assumed I would remain emotionally parked exactly where he left me. I locked my phone and set it face down. Then I stood in the middle of the apartment and looked around slowly. The framed vacation photo near the bookshelf, the blanket we picked together, his coffee mug in the drying rack. Suddenly, everything felt temporary, not because love is temporary, because respect is. And once respect leaves, love starts decaying quietly behind it. Rowan came home earlier than I expected. The moment he stepped inside, I could tell something had shifted. Not enough, but something. He saw me sitting at the dining table with my laptop open. "What are you doing?" "Budgeting." His eyes narrowed. "For what?" "Our separation." The word hit the room like shattered glass. He froze. "Savannah?" "No," I interrupted softly. "You don't get to panic now." "I'm not panicking. You canceled our relationship before I canceled a vacation. That's not fair. Neither was asking me to emotionally wait while you tested chemistry with another woman." His face hardened immediately. "Nothing happened." I held his gaze. That line only matters to the person trying to keep technical innocence. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then his voice lowered. "You really think I'd throw away 2.5 years for some trainer?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. No, I said quietly. I think you believed you could risk me and still keep me. That was the first sentence that truly broke through. His expression flickered. Not anger this time. Fear. Real fear. Because for the first time, Rowan understood something terrifying. I was no longer competing for my own relationship. And once a woman stops competing, the entire balance changes. After that conversation, the apartment stopped feeling like home. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, like warmth leaving a room after someone opens a window in winter. Rowan became quieter over the next few days. More careful, more observant. He started watching my reactions the same way I had been watching his. The difference was simple. I had already accepted what was happening. He was only beginning to realize he might actually lose control of it. One morning, he stood in the kitchen holding his phone with a frustrated expression. The phone plan got separated. I continued tying my shoes near the door. Yes. You actually went through with all this? I looked up calmly. You mean reality? His jaw flexed. You're trying to punish me. No, I said. I'm trying to stop pretending. That answer followed him all day. I could tell because he texted more than usual afterward. Little check-ins. What time will you be home? Do you want dinner later? Can we talk tonight? It almost would have felt sweet if it hadn't arrived immediately after consequences entered the room. By the end of that week, the confidence he carried around Celeste had started fading. He stopped casually mentioning her name, stopped talking about freedom and growth, stopped sounding inspired and started sounding defensive. But people reveal themselves most clearly when they feel something slipping away. And Rowan was beginning to feel it. That Friday evening, I came home to find him sitting alone in the dark living room. Only the city lights outside illuminated the apartment. For a second, the sight almost hurt me, because it reminded me of the version of him I had once loved without hesitation. Then he looked up. We need to figure this out. I placed my bag down quietly. You already figured it out. You just thought I'd stay while you did. That's not what I wanted. Then what did you want? He rubbed both hands over his face slowly. I don't know, he admitted. And finally, there it was. The truth. Not a deep emotional revelation. Not some beautiful, complicated explanation. Just selfish uncertainty wrapped in prettier language. I think I got caught up in... He paused. The attention. I leaned against the counter. The attention? She made me feel different. I nodded once. Yes, new people usually do. His expression tightened because he realized immediately how small that sounded out loud. She listened to me. I listened to you too. That's not what I mean. No, I said quietly. I know. What he meant was excitement. Novelty. The ego boost of being seen through fresh eyes. That intoxicating feeling of being admired without history attached to it. And none of that was love. It was chemistry without responsibility. Rowan stood up slowly. I never planned to leave you. That's the part you still don't understand. He frowned. You think staying physically faithful makes this better, but emotionally, you already started building another version of yourself that didn't include me. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because he knew I was right. I walked past him toward the kitchen. You know what the worst part is? I asked softly. He turned toward me. I would have respected honesty. If you had come to me and said you felt disconnected, lost, unhappy, maybe we could have fought for something real. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet, but instead you wanted to experiment while keeping me emotionally reserved like a backup plan. That's not fair. I looked at him over the rim of the glass. Stop saying fair whenever the truth feels uncomfortable. That silenced him again. Over the next several days, the atmosphere between us became painfully fragile. Not explosive. Almost worse. Controlled. Like two people standing in a collapsing building pretending the walls weren't cracking. Then, one night, everything shifted again. Rowan came home unusually early. No gym bag, no restless energy, just exhaustion. He dropped his keys onto the counter and stood there silently for several seconds. What happened? I asked. He laughed once under his breath. But it wasn't humor. She asked me something tonight. Celeste? He nodded. She asked why I was still living with you if I was so unhappy. I stayed very still. And what did you say? His silence answered before his words did. I told her I wasn't unhappy. There it was. The moment fantasy collided with reality. Because people like Rowan imagine they are chasing a new life, but eventually someone forces them to define what they're actually leaving behind. And suddenly the excitement doesn't feel as clean anymore. She got upset, he admitted quietly. I leaned back against the counter. Because she thought she was the beginning of your new life. His eyes lifted toward mine slowly. And she realized she was just your unfinished decision. That hit him hard. For the first time, Rowan looked genuinely ashamed. Not ashamed enough to undo what he started, but enough to finally see it clearly. I didn't think things would get this messy, he whispered. I almost smiled at that. Messy. Such a harmless word for emotional destruction. You thought you could manage everyone's feelings carefully enough to avoid consequences, I said. I didn't want to hurt you. But you were willing to risk hurting me. He looked down immediately. And that was the moment I realized something important. Rowan had spent weeks treating my calmness like emotional stability. But calm women are dangerous when they finally detach. Because once we stop trying to convince someone to choose us, we begin quietly preparing for life without them. That weekend, he barely left the apartment. No gym, no dinner plans, no glowing phone screen lighting up his face at midnight. Instead, he hovered around me carefully, like someone standing near broken glass afraid of making the damage worse. Sunday morning, he found me reviewing finances at the dining table. A printed sheet sat beside my laptop. Rent, utilities, subscriptions, travel refunds, future apartment costs. He stared at the paper. What is this? The new structure. His face drained slightly. You already planned all this? Yes. So, you really think this relationship is over? I looked at him quietly for several seconds. Then I answered honestly, no. Hope flashed across his face too quickly, and that was exactly why my next sentence hurt him. I think you already ended it, I said softly, and now you're finally realizing I listened. After that, Rowan changed. Not in the dramatic way people imagine when guilt finally catches up to someone. There were no grand speeches, no flowers, no desperate crying in the rain, just a slow unraveling. He started lingering around me more often, like proximity alone could undo what had already happened. He offered to cook dinner, asked if I wanted coffee when he stopped for one in the morning, sent me random messages during the day that sounded almost painfully normal, saw something that reminded me of you. Hope your meeting went okay. Drive safe. The ordinary intimacy of it almost hurt more than the betrayal itself, because now he was acting like the man I had needed weeks earlier. And timing changes everything. One night, about 2 weeks after the Cabo cancellation, I came home later than expected after meeting a friend from work. When I stepped into the apartment, Rowan was sitting at the kitchen island with both hands clasped together, waiting. The second he saw me, I knew. Something had happened. Not externally, internally. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I placed my purse down slowly. You keep asking that like we haven't been talking for weeks. A weak smile touched his mouth, then disappeared. This time's different. I leaned against the counter across from him. Okay. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled like the words physically hurt to say. I think I made a mistake. There it was. The sentence he once believed he would never have to say. I stayed silent. Not to punish him. To let the truth breathe fully in the room. Rowan rubbed his palms together nervously. I got caught up in the attention and the excitement and the stupid idea that maybe I was missing something in life. He swallowed hard, but none of it felt the way I thought it would. I studied him carefully, because regret and discomfort are not the same thing. People confuse them constantly. What changed? I asked. His eyes flicked toward mine, then away again. That dinner with Celeste, he paused. It stopped feeling exciting after a while. Of course it did. Fantasy survives best before reality enters it. What happened? She asked me where things were going. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was inevitable. New people become real eventually, and the moment they become real, fantasy gets heavier. I told her I didn't know. And? She got angry. I nodded slowly. Because she realized she wasn't special. She was just the person standing closest to your confusion. That landed hard. His eyes closed briefly. I never wanted this to become whatever this became. But it did. Yes. Silence stretched between us. Then Rowan finally looked directly at me again. I thought I wanted freedom, he admitted, but I think I just wanted to feel admired again. That honesty almost hurt worse than the betrayal, because it was so painfully human. Not evil, not monstrous, just selfish. And selfishness destroys relationships every day. You know what the worst part is? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. The second you stopped chasing me emotionally, his voice cracked slightly. I started panicking. There it was, the truth underneath everything. Not love suddenly awakening, fear. Because as long as I remained emotionally available, Rowan could keep exploring himself safely. But the moment I emotionally stepped back, he was forced to experience uncertainty too. That's what happens when the comfort disappears, I said softly. He looked down immediately because he knew I was right. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. I didn't think you'd actually let me go. My chest tightened, despite everything, because that sentence explained the entire relationship in ways Rowan himself probably didn't even fully understand. He thought my love was permanent regardless of his behavior. He thought stability meant endurance. He thought I would absorb confusion until he decided whether he still wanted me fully, and maybe, at one point, I would have. That was the painful truth. The old version of me probably would have fought harder, but heartbreak changes shape once dignity enters the room. I crossed my arms lightly. So what now? He looked at me carefully. I want to fix this. Another simple sentence arriving late. How? I asked. I'll stop seeing her. I held his gaze. That doesn't rebuild what you broke. His expression faltered. I'll leave the gym. That still doesn't answer the real problem. What do you want me to say? I want you to understand that this didn't break because of Celeste. He stared at me silently. It broke because the moment you became curious about another life, you treated me like something guaranteed while you explored it. His throat moved slightly as he swallowed. I know. No, I said softly. You know now. That's different. The room became very still. Then Rowan stood slowly and walked closer to me. Not aggressively, carefully, like someone approaching an injured animal he once frightened. I do love you, he said quietly. That hurt. Because I believed him, and sometimes love is not the problem. Character is. I looked away toward the dark window overlooking the city. You can love someone and still slowly destroy their trust. His voice cracked behind me. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes briefly. Not because I forgave him. Because a part of me wished he had understood all this before I stopped needing the apology. A few days later, I found out from one of his gym friends that Celeste had already stopped talking to him entirely. Apparently, she told people she didn't want to be involved in someone else's unresolved relationship. The irony almost made me smile. Because suddenly, Rowan was alone with the exact relationship he had destabilized, trying to avoid feeling trapped. One evening, he asked quietly from the couch, "Do you think people can come back from something like this?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. Yes, I said honestly. Hope flickered across his face again. Then I finished the sentence. But only if both people still want the same version of the relationship. The hope disappeared instantly, because deep down, Rowan was finally starting to understand something terrifying. The woman who once would have fought for him no matter what had already started disappearing weeks ago, and he had been too distracted chasing something new to notice. After that conversation, something inside the apartment finally settled. Not repaired, not healed, just clear. Rowan stopped trying to act like everything could quietly return to normal. The hopeful energy disappeared from him little by little, replaced by the heavy realization that some damage does not happen all at once. Sometimes it happens in layers. One selfish decision, one careless sentence, one assumption that love will wait no matter how far you wander from it. And by the time you recognize the full weight of what you've done, the person you hurt has already emotionally packed their bags. A week later, I signed the lease on a smaller apartment across town. I didn't tell Rowan immediately, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted one thing in my life to belong completely to me before another conversation turned into emotional negotiation. The apartment was quiet, bright, simple. No shared memories inside it. No invisible tension sitting in the corners. Just space. For the first time in weeks, space didn't feel threatening. It felt peaceful. That evening, Rowan was cooking when I came home. Pasta sauce simmered on the stove. Music played softly from his phone. For a split second, the scene looked painfully normal, like a version of us from before all this. Then I noticed the effort in it, the carefulness, the attempt. And the tragedy of relationships is that effort arriving late still looks sincere. "Smells good," I said quietly. He turned toward me with cautious hope. "I thought maybe we could eat together tonight." I nodded once. "Okay." Dinner was calm, too calm. We talked about work, traffic, random things neither of us cared about. The conversation felt like two people standing on opposite sides of broken glass pretending not to notice the cracks between them. Then finally, halfway through dinner, I said it. "I signed a lease today." Everything stopped. The fork in Rowan's hand froze midair. "What?" "I'm moving out next week." The color drained from his face so quickly it almost frightened me. "No." The word came out instantly. Pure instinct, not thought. "I'm not asking permission," I said gently. His breathing changed. "Savannah, wait." He stopped himself, as if even saying my name properly reminded him how much of me he had stopped seeing. Tears filled his eyes before he could hide them, and somehow that hurt more than anger would have. "You said maybe people could come back from this," he whispered. "They can, but I..." "Then why are you leaving?" I looked at him carefully for a long moment, because this was the hardest truth of all. Because I finally realized I was the only person fighting for us before things fell apart. His face crumpled slightly. "That's not true." "It is." I pushed my plate aside slowly. "You wanted freedom first. Consequences only became real once you realized I might not stay." "That's not fair," I almost smiled sadly. "You still keep saying fair like relationships are courtroom negotiations." He looked down immediately, and there it was again. That shame. Too late. Always too late. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know." "Then why does this feel so final?" The answer sat in my chest before I spoke it. "Because trust doesn't usually break in one moment," I said carefully. "It breaks when someone watches you hurting and still keeps testing how much they can take without losing you." Tears slipped down his face. Real ones. Not dramatic, not manipulative, just grief. And for a moment, seeing him like that almost shattered my resolve, because despite everything, I still loved him too. That was the cruel part. Love surviving longer than safety. But then I remembered everything. The nights he came home, glowing from attention that wasn't mine. The way he said, "I need to follow my desires," like our relationship was flexible enough to survive his curiosity. The confidence in his voice when he assumed I would remain emotionally available while he explored another version of himself. And suddenly my sadness became clarity again. "I hope you become whoever you were trying to find," I said softly. His eyes closed. "That's not what I want anymore." I believed him. But timing matters. And some realizations arrive only after the damage has already changed the structure permanently. The next week passed quietly. No screaming. No dramatic collapse. Just boxes. Closets emptying slowly. Shared spaces becoming neutral. Rowan tried a few more times. Small things. Coffee left outside my door in the morning. A note saying, "We can still fix this." One late-night whisper of, "Please don't go." Every single one hurt. Because 6 weeks earlier, they might have saved us. Now they only proved he finally understood the value of something after risking it recklessly. On my last morning there, Rowan stood near the doorway while I zipped my final suitcase. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he asked the question I think he had been carrying this entire time. Did you stop loving me? I looked at him honestly. No. That seemed to break him even more. Then why does this feel impossible? I adjusted the handle of my suitcase slowly before answering. Because love is not the same thing as emotional safety. The silence afterward felt enormous. Then I walked toward the door. Rowan's voice stopped me one last time. I really thought you'd wait. I closed my eyes briefly. Not from anger, from sadness. Because that sentence explained everything better than all his earlier speeches about freedom and growth ever could. He thought my love was permanent enough to survive disrespect, and maybe once it was. But eventually, every person reaches the moment where preserving their dignity matters more than preserving the relationship alone. I opened the door, and before leaving, I turned back one final time. You didn't lose me when you got curious about someone else, I said quietly. You lost me when you assumed I would still be here after it. Then I walked out, and for the first time in months, the silence around me finally felt peaceful instead of lonely.